Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of the Accelerating AI podcast. I think it's our seventh episode, guys. Seventh now.
Something like
Really
that.
starting to wrap them up. We're going to be in double figures soon. Exciting times. Although it's probably a good time to say there might be a little bit of a break in these over the next couple of weeks, with it being sort of summer holidays and such. But we'll be back as soon as we possibly can after this session. Guys, I thought we'd do something a bit different today, if that's all right. Sorry, I should say I'm joined by Andy and Lionel. Again, the usual crew, and we're looking at maybe getting some guests on next time or in a future episode, not too far from now. But where I'm sort of going with that is, look, we talked a lot in previous sessions around sort of what AI is, some of the fundamentals, and where we think this is all going in the future. I think a lot of its future is being future based, right? What's going to happen in the future, and that's really, really important. But reflecting on sort of the conversations that we have as a three outside of these calls and our own experiences, we're all using, I guess, some of the same tools, but we're all using different tools as well. And I thought it'd be really useful for the listeners if we could just kind of share some of our experiences. What are we using in the day to day? How do those things even work? I guess some of the things that we're getting tangible benefit from today, rather than kind of like, the future, like right now, what's been really effective, what's helped you guys out. So open that question up to the floor. Guys, anything that's really stand out for you at the moment?
Can I go first? So anybody and everybody who knows me, I've always been a Microsoft champion. Okay, so Microsoft Copilot, and there's two ways I'm using AI at the moment. I'm using AI in a sort of everyday get stuff done thread where AI is built into my entire workday as a natural extension of the tools that I use. And being a Microsoft house, Microsoft 365, and all the Microsoft apps. So that's Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint, Excel. My day-to-day life for general stuff, I live in Microsoft Copilot. And I must admit, for everyday general productivity, that has been a godsend, an absolute godsend. Understanding how to respond to emails, drafting really quick replies, helping me prepare. I mean, a really simple feature recently from Copilot was my diary. I can see my diary entries. If I hover over a diary entry and it's meeting, I click help me prepare for this meeting. And immediately it spins up Copilot, looks at everything related to that meeting and helps me prepare for that meeting in a really, really concise way. So it's almost become a natural extension of every single thing I do in everyday work. So that's been a real game changer, all the way from distilling what happened in meetings, taking meeting summaries and action points and building it into Microsoft Loop so you can start assigning tasks to people. The way you collaborate, it's completely changed the way I collaborate. So as an everyday supercharge your general productivity, that's just been absolutely immense. And what's great about it is I didn't have to leave the applications I'm used to go and perform a piece of work somewhere else. It's just natively in my work IQ and Microsoft, right? So that's been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah. So I think one of my biggest tools right now, and we talked about this before, right? Claude is kind of front and center of a lot of the conversations we've all had, and we're playing with them actively. So we'll have the Claude conversation maybe in a minute. But I think, just kind of outside of Claude, note takers have really taken a lot of work off the hands of people, right? So when we go back to Microsoft, I've used on a client account, just the idea of facilitator and Copilot is really cool. Any Teams meeting, you switch on facilitator. It's pretty cool. It transcribes the call. It kind of says, you've got 5 more minutes. Here's the action so far. So having that in Teams is really cool because you've got this sort of digital employee that is like guiding the conversation, wrapping it up and taking notes. And then you've obviously got transcription there as well, so it summarizes it. I think another really powerful non-Microsoft tool I'm using on a day-to-day basis is Granola. Granola is also an AI note taker. I think what's really fascinating about it is the fact that it's super easy to connect into your downstream products. So I've hooked it up to Claude, I've hooked it up to Gmail, I've hooked it up to a number of different tools through MCP. And so transcribe the meeting and it says like, okay, do you want me to prepare a follow-up email? Great. So it's got the context right to that and drafts it all the way in Granola itself, and then it fires it off from Granola out to my Gmail with my signature and everything formatted correctly. Super powerful, right? And then there's like other things in that same Granola app. There's little components called recipes, and recipes are the ability to just kind of list things. That's kind of like pre-structured prompts, glorified prompts. And so I have a recipe for my latest to-dos. So it will just go through all of my transcripts and say, right, Andy, based on all your transcripts, you need to follow up with Matt and Lionel on this topic, and you need to go to this client about this other topic. And this is the thing that you needed to send on this call. We've done that. And so it instantly becomes your, a guiding assistant to your daily, for daily follow-ups. Another cool thing is 30 minutes before your meeting, it runs a brief recipe, which is a meeting brief recipe. It looks up my LinkedIn, it looks up my conversations in HubSpot, it looks up my emails. It says, hey, for example, you're going to meet Matt and Lionel in 10 minutes. Here's what you talked about last time. Here's some stuff going on online about them, and, prepares you for that call. And I don't have to do anything. It just does it itself. So I find that I'm just living in granola quite regularly now. So yeah, that's one of
It's really, really interesting. You mentioned MCP there, and I just thought I'd sort of unpack that a little bit and what that actually means. So it stands for Model Context Protocol. Effectively, it's a universal language that all AI models have adopted as a way of connecting data over here to the model, right? And if you step back for a moment and kind of look at, we talked a lot about code, we've talked a lot about Claude, we've talked a lot about the models themselves. Actually, one of the really big things that's happened over the last 6 to 12 months is just this explosion of existing SaaS products that we all use every day, suddenly making an MCP available so that you can connect AI tools to it, right? So think of it as a connector, basically, and they are actually called connectors in Claude. So what does that mean? It means that all of a sudden, I don't know if you can cash your minds back 12, 18 months where you'd have a chat conversation with ChatGPT, for example, and you'd say, help me get a report together of the last 6 months figures, right? Well, it didn't have a connection to any of the tools. Let's say you wanted to look at your website traffic, right? Couldn't connect to Google Analytics. So it would then send you on a journey of going to GA4 or whatever tool you wanted to get that analytics data from, exporting that data out and manually importing it in. But of course, every time you want to do that, you've got to do that manually again. So it's not actually saving an awful lot of time. Well, now it can connect to those tools and the library of tools that Claude can connect to, but also all the other models as well, is rapidly growing. And actually, ironically, lots of people are using AI to develop an MCP server for their application, right? So it's been quite quick, the expansion of MCP. So going down a layer deeper than that, if you're able to connect your time tracking tool, your task management tool, your CRM tool, your analytics, all of this stuff to AI, and I'm using that as a general term for any of them, any of the big frontier models providers, that unlocks something really, really powerful. You can schedule things, yes, but all of a sudden, the days of APIs are behind us, right? All of a sudden, you can go connect to my accounts package and connect to my CRM and tell me, or have we built this deal that's in our CRM, and it can go and check the accounts package to see if an invoice has been raised, right? Now, all of a sudden, you can start stitching tools together and getting some really, really powerful insight by merging the data that sits in these different siloed platforms. And actually, you can build a dashboard using Claude Code that pulls that all together from those various platforms. And then on top of that, you've got the ability to schedule things. You've got the ability to actually rerun jobs over and over and over again. And that is the crux, I think, of what's been quite transformative in our agency, because now you can come into work in the morning and have a daily briefing, right? And in that daily briefing will be, here's our sales performance for the month so far, pulling from your accounts package. But in that same message, it will be, and these are the top 5 tasks you need to focus on from Asana. And here's what the team spent time doing yesterday. And you can get all that context in one place at the drop of a hat, at the, when you need it and when you want it. And I think that's the thing that a lot of businesses aren't quite understanding at the moment. Maybe they just haven't realized that this is possible, or maybe there's a perception that it's really complicated to set up. And I don't personally think it is. I think it's pretty straightforward. What do you think, guys? Do you think that's lost on a lot of people at the moment, that this is capability that exists?
Yeah, it is definitely lost on a lot of people. I think most people are still grasping the idea of an agent, never mind how do you connect your whatever agentic harness that you're using to an MCP server, right? One of the things that really plays to why getting to understand this stuff is really important, because the innate ability to reason and think within the models are becoming better and better every single release, right? Which means that the ability to apply really thought out processes that involves deep thinking, okay? Which leads me to say things like, not only now can you ask, give me a trend of my sales performance, okay? You now can ask even deeper questions. Help me to understand where I make the most amount of profit, and crucially, what activities can I do to help me increase my profit? So we're not just using AI to understand the data, but we can now, because of its thinking ability, help us to apply mechanisms for us to actually do the job better, get it to do the heavy lifting and the thinking for us. So it's gone from being, how we use Google as a search engine to using AI as an answer engine. AI is now becoming a thinking engine, something that we add to help us with our critical thinking every single day, right?
I think it's a thinking and doing agent.
Yeah, thinking. Of course, thinking and doing. And because it can think to that degree, its ability to work in a loop where it betters itself, goes out, finds a problem, and its ability to write a bit of code to fix the problem, and then its ability to go out and test whether it's fixed it. And if it's not, go back into the loop and fix it. And do that recursively until it's got a solution. And I think that's where we're starting to see the power of these tools really shine, right? To almost outstrip our ability and our thought process, right? It's becoming a thinking partner.
There was I've talked about it at length. I've been using Claude Code a lot, but there was a moment last week where I was using Fable 5, and basically I had this issue on a website, and the problem, I guess, with Claude Code is that it does spin up its own virtual environment, and it only knows what's in its environment. So if you imagine you've got a website over here with a database with loads of pages you built out, but Claude only knows about the theme that it built. It doesn't have that data, and it certainly doesn't know what plugins are installed on that website, etc. We were having an issue basically where there was a conflict with a plugin that was installed. So it's not something that Claude would be aware of because it sits outside of what it's been building, right? And I was trying to work out what the problem was. And because we connected our hosting platform to Claude as via MCP, one of the connectors, it realized that it needed to actually know what plugins were installed on the live website to be able to diagnose the problem. So I said to it, would you like me to provide you with a list of plugins that we have installed on the site so you can try and work this out? Next thing I know, it's found a tool, it's connected to our hosting platform, it's just gone and checked itself. So that's that reasoning and thinking. It's gone, well, I have the tool, I have the access, I can go and find out for myself what plugins are installed. And in the end, it fixed the problem and pushed the commit, and it was done. So
and also and I've also seen sometimes it knows that the other tool and the other plugin that you want to use is necessary. It will actually code around it. In many cases, it will actually work a way so that you can keep the existing tooling.
And that's exactly what it did, by the way.
And code around the tooling. Yeah. Phenomenal.
Yeah, it effectively created its own exception rule. So that plugin wouldn't cause a conflict anymore. So it didn't touch the plugin. It just wrote code, as you say, around it to patch it.
But that's purely down to the reasoning capability of the agentic harness, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, I was going to just ask, just coming back to the question, like what other, besides obviously Claude and Claude Code, are you using?
Yeah, sorry, I went down the
day-to-day
MCP
basis?
rabbit hole and I didn't actually answer the question, my own question. So to reel off a few, Read AI, very similar to Granola. It does the AI note taking. But to sort of take what you were saying a little bit further, I haven't taken meeting minutes. I haven't created actions manually following a meeting in months. Because what actually happens is I have a meeting, it's recorded and transcribed in Read AI. Then twice a day, Claude Cowork goes and checks to see if I've been in any meetings that day. And then it goes and creates the tasks in Asana for me, assigns them to me, and has the foresight to assign an appropriate due date based on the complexity of that task. And frankly, my issue has always been, going into enough detail in tasks, because I'll put, I'm a busy guy, I'm between meetings, I'll just put something really quickly in so I don't forget about it. Actually, it describes in detail what the task is. Yeah. It's very task orientated. And it even gives you a link back to that transcript if you want to go and look at it. And it has the foresight to actually tag that it was created by Claude. So if I ever wonder where that came from, it's stitching those things together. So now I can have a meeting, with you guys, and Matt's been assigned 5 things to do, and nothing gets forgotten because it all automatically goes into our task management tool, Asana, and is assigned to me. I think that's what I'm getting a lot of like practical day-to-day value out of things like that, little solutions like that. Giving me a roundup of my day, managing my email mailbox, and making sure that, I'm not inundated with spam. I mean, I've been using a tool called SaneBox for about 2.5 years now, which has categorized all of my emails coming in. And basically, I don't see spam emails anymore. It all goes into it literally calls it a black hole, and it disappears and I never see it. And things like that, compound over time. These time saving things that the drains that you don't really realize are draining your time, like typing up actions in Asana, actually just free you up to do more valuable work. And that's been my experience. There's one tool. Can we talk about Claude now? I know I've mentioned it a little bit, but I just want to, in our agency setting, so we're obviously in the world of marketing and building websites and designing stuff and being creative. These are all kinds of things we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And historically, some of those things have been very, very, very manual indeed. A couple of things I want to point out about Claude that again, if you don't know, you don't know. I think there's this perception with Claude that it's just like ChatGPT and it's just a chatbot and you chat to it and that's what it does. And we've mentioned Claude Code, and I think Claude Code is probably sort of the obvious outlier in terms of being different. But there's some other things that Claude does that you might not realize. So Claude Cowork, again, we've talked about. This is where it can effectively take control of your desktop PC, or in the browser with the browser extension, take control of your browser extension. So one example, after the conference, we had a list of 200 people that registered to attend. I gave Claude, the browser extension, the ability to go onto my LinkedIn and go and connect with them all. Something that I would have done because I would never have found the time. So you do have to be careful with stuff like that, just by the way, on LinkedIn. You don't want to get yourself banned, but it was a relatively small number and I got it to pace itself. So you've got Claude Cowork that can physically do things on your machine, and they've also launched Dispatch as well. So you can basically, from your mobile phone, tell it on the desktop to go and do a job for you, like go and check my downloads folder for that document that I downloaded and forgot to email myself, right? And then send it to me. So that's kind of Claude Cowork. You've got Claude Code, as I mentioned, but one of the really exciting ones that I've kind of been using, it was in beta, it might still be in beta, is Claude Design. Claude Design, in a nutshell, is it all starts with a design system. And actually, that's not a new concept. That's something that, brand guides is another way of looking at a design system. Design systems are more UX, UI orientated. But the point is you create this brand Bible, right? This brand guide, and then it's got it, right? So next time you come along, you can go, give me a social media post graphic to generate it. Animate me a short animation of my logo, does it?
It does.
Design me a new website, does it, right? And all of a sudden, we're getting into this, and relatively recently, as in like weeks to months timescales, we're now designing entire websites using Claude Design. And then you can pass off that design to Claude Code to do the build, right? Again, one example is that one of the first websites I've designed and built is our own acceleratingai.co.uk website. That was fully designed end to end. So create the design system, briefed it on what I wanted the website to do and how I wanted it to function. It obviously knew how it needed to look because it had the design system. Gave it some images, gave it some copy, again, all generated using Claude. And then gave it feedback and it edited the thing in real time. And then when I was done with that, I sent it off to Claude Code and said, build me a WordPress theme. We use WordPress. Pick your poison on CMS, but I wanted it to be editable and I wanted it to be built in a way that we would have built it. And it did. And basically the website, as you see today, was fully from end to end designed and built with Claude, which I think is just phenomenal, right? It's been that missing piece for a long time, that design creative bit.
I think this is just like transformational for any small business, medium-sized business that has, probably doesn't have the time and capacity, but has kind of the basic skills to prompt and is able to configure and do the basics of a website and get from 0 to 1 on that, right? Like there is absolutely so much opportunity now at our fingertips if we just know. I think this is why we have this podcast, is to educate those businesses, those owners around that are curious, that are wanting to learn about the art of the possible with AI. And then there's just like so much, like this Claude Design thing was something that you kind of shouted about a few weeks ago, Matt, to us. I hadn't really bothered setting myself up a design system. I have now, but it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I guess another tool that I use tangential to that is Canva, right? Canva has been around for a long, long time. Similar kind of concept in terms of like you build the brand design, you build the colors, the schemes, and then you're off to the races and building the deck or the PowerPoint, the deck or the website or whatever within Canva. I've been using Canva AI, which is quite similar in that it's agentic. You could say, hey, build me this deck, use my scheme, color scheme and brand design. It then creates objects, text boxes, circles, designed, moves things around, layout. And then you can say, like, actually on this slide, I want to, relay it in a different way and describe that. And it will just literally in front of you pick up the objects and move them around. That's been really cool. There's one use case I had, which was I was tasked to build almost like a demo video of a chatbot, and it was completely I didn't bother building the prototype, but I wanted to just kind of art possible with Canva AI to figure out how can I visualize this, and I thought I'll use video generation tools. Turns out I don't think we're there yet to do demo videos with AI video generation. It's quite interesting though, and you can challenge me on that. But like, I found that I got really, really held up on building like demo videos within the video generation tool. But what I did do in Canva AI was, hey, here's a 10-slide presentation. I want you to build the animations to feel like it's a video of a demo. And sure enough, it took about an hour back and forth with iterations. But I had almost like a demo video of a chat bot, and somebody's prompting and the chat comes up and the responses are showing. So it's really cool.
What's really interesting there, Andy, I know that I think that predated the conversation we had about Claude Design. But Claude Design does do animation as well. So what you could do, I mean, if you had that problem again tomorrow, I no guarantee this will work. You'd have to try it, but have it storyboard out in static graphics what you want that animation to show, and then have it go through and animate those clips together. I actually think you'd probably be able to do it now with Claude Design.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here. Okay. It sounds very much like Claude is your guy's go-to for the heavy lifting, right? Okay. But if you look at the posture of the AIs, and if you look at the way they've been developed, given the objective of the LLM providers, this is really important. So OpenAI focused heavily in previous terms what they did in the consumer market. Okay. So they started building a lot, and their focus was on the consumer market. So OpenAI's ability to do things for the consumer is definitely better than Anthropic's ability. Okay. And its image generation for GPT far outstrips Anthropic's Opus, even Fable. Anthropic's stance is they decided to take on the enterprise market, which meant that their focus was on coding. Therefore, Claude is the exemplar coding heavy lifter on the planet right now. Okay. Well, what's really interesting, if you asked me last week what was happening in the market in terms of LLMs, I would have told you that there was a duopoly. There's only two people in the front runners, and that was OpenAI and Anthropic. You ask me now, we are no longer in a duopoly. If you look at the performance of Grok 4.5, it now is better than Opus 4.8. And if you look at Meta's Spark, you will be pleasantly surprised just how far they've come along. So we now suddenly have 4 front runners, right? All of them are pretty great. And now we're asking ourselves, well, where's Gemini? Gemini's nano banana for images and stuff is absolutely exemplar. I don't think the four guys at the top can touch it. But Gemini is nowhere to be found. Now, if you really want to look at video generation, have a look at DeepSeek Seedance V2. Seedance blows everything we know about video generation completely out of the water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you really want to see what the video generation capabilities need to do, you have to start thinking in multimodal mode. Go to Claude for the heavy lifting for the build. Use Codex for the more creative stuff. I mean, we all look Claude Design. We think Claude Design is great, but have you tried that in Codex? Have you seen the design elements there? And then if you want to play with video, go and have a look at what Seedance is doing. And if you go multimodal, you suddenly start to up the game, right?
Yeah.
Really
Well,
up.
Agreed.
it's interesting because when we were talking early on in this year, we were talking about OpenClaw, and then we had a conversation
Mm.
about Perplexity Computer, if you remember. I
Yeah.
mean, Perplexities, they don't have their own model. They effectively do what you're describing. They select the appropriate model for that particular job, and I do think that's the future of this tech. I don't think it's my decision. I don't think it's a good use of my time to be bouncing between different models, right? I think that's where this has got to end up. And if you know, appreciate we're in a race to the finish line, wherever that is at the moment, and these companies are all competitors of each other. But they have shown themselves to be able to collaborate and work together. They have shown that they're able to collaborate on things like MCPs we were talking about earlier. It's a pretty standard way of doing things. I know they're talking about, having a universal way of being able to detect through invisible watermarks, images and videos that have been generated with AI. So I think maybe this is an industry, there's this industry solution in there somewhere where, it doesn't just need a perplexity, but it needs collaboration across these platforms, to help the consumer not have to make that decision about which model to use.
Copilot's doing that at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So Copilot allows you to use OpenAI. It natively started with OpenAI as the LLM provider. It now allows you to use Anthropic. It now allows you to use Mistral. Okay. How long before they start porting out the capability to, if something can do video generation better than the Forerunner as well, how long before they port the ability to bring video generation into the platform?
I think there's been a big push and pull between SaaS is dead, right? A lot of people were
Absolutely.
saying that, and we were saying that, right? We see it. We see the opportunity that people and businesses can just create their own applications with these tools, whether that's Codex, right? Codex is very good now. Their upgrade this week seems very, very highly performant and arguably better than Claude Code in different benchmarks, right? And that's one thing we've got to think about when we say better or higher performant, right? There's different ways to measure for that. Great resource, Artificial Analysis, which is a platform with loads of benchmark data on all the models on cost, speed, latency, coding, all the different factors. Really cool stuff if you want to check that out. But I think there's where I think SaaS could survive, where we think about, whether it's like the big tech companies like Google and Microsoft and Amazon. Yes, absolutely diversifying on models is another one area. But I think all the other SaaS products, I'll take Granola, for example, just coming back to it, you can actually select different models, right? So you're not just tied to Claude or GPT, you've got other models available. And I think for a SaaS product today, if you really want to survive in this, what sounds like a massive, culling of companies, especially the ones that have just started up and are getting destroyed by, these AI competitors or labs that are rebuilding these. I'm sure Canva must have felt the hit when Claude Design came out, and all AI like Sora came out, last year and got canned in the end. Like these video generation, presentation, graphics, and things like that. All of these tools AI labs are building, these modern, these like household brands like Canva now took a hit. But now I think where they could survive, and just being kind of like putting my crystal ball in front of me and looking into it, is if they diversify on models, right? If they give the optionality, because I think this whole concern around too much emphasis on one particular provider and the risk around that, and all of the legislative geopolitical stuff that came out of that. I think that's where the small businesses of startups of the world today that are trying to build next generation AI tools or powered by AI, if they continue that diversified model, I think that they could also survive. I know we're going in a bit of a rabbit hole now of a different conversation, but I was thinking about like SaaS is dead and that statement, and I was thinking about how does SaaS stay alive if you and I had our own platforms today? And I think that may be just like a strategy there. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think, well, just to add on that, I do think that there is a class of SaaS product that they are absolute specialists in what they do, and they are the go-to for that thing, and they stand a chance if they aggressively adopt AI and build that into their platform. I used the analogy the other week of like an accounts company, an accountant building their own version of QuickBooks, right? Or their own accounting platform. Now, yes, technically that's possible. right? And that was just an example that I used. And I thought about it and I thought, I don't think I'd want to do that, right? I think I'd want to trust and place trust in a company like QuickBooks that are experts in this
Well,
field, right?
I think you've got an overarching issue with that. Is how do you deal with legislation and real-time
Yeah.
information reporting? I mean, do
Mhm.
you really want to get involved with that kind of regulatory compliance, right?
I suppose it's the other analogy would be like whether you DIY your home improvements or whether you get an expert in for each of the jobs, right?
Yeah.
We're having our bathroom done at the moment, and yeah, I could have done it. I could have done our bathroom. It would have took me a long time. I would have been knackered, and I guarantee you there'll be some wobbly tiles in there, right? And maybe a leak or two. And I think this is the situation, isn't it? Right now, if it was
Mm.
just a cupboard and I'm not really that worried about it. There's not much that can go wrong. Then yeah, sure, I'd probably do it myself. And I think you do have to make that conscious decision. I think the line becomes blurred in a situation where yes, technically you could, but should you build it yourself? And I think that is where again some businesses will trip up and some businesses will make mistakes because they'll spend days building something they could have just paid £5 a month for. And by the way, it's in a rapidly moving space, and you're going to need to keep on top of maintaining that now,
Yeah.
and the legislation and everything else that comes with things like your accounts packages. So I think that's an interesting take on it. Like sort of juxtapose what I said last time about it's great you can have an idea and just do it, but yeah, okay,
Well, you've got to pick your battles,
I,
right?
I think I think AI pilled culture right now is that you suddenly discover that Claude Code exists or that Codex exists, Lovable exists, Base4 exists, and then you're like, I don't need a software developer to do this. And then you realize, oh crap, I've got to acquire users, I've got to gather feedback, I've got to figure out distribution, I've got to figure out how to make this better. And by the way, I don't even understand the plumbing underneath the sink. Like this analogy you used, Matt. Right? I don't really know how that works, but I know that Claude did it for me, and so it should work. But then that day might come where
Well,
you have to fix
yeah.
that. So there's
I don't know. Yeah, perhaps. I think for now, I think that is the case for now, Andy. Definitely. But there is a time coming in the not so long in the future, where a one-shot prompt will give you exactly what you need and what you're looking for with all things considered. And I think we're not very, very far away from that. And that's why when we say SaaS is dead, that's what I honestly believe. Somebody will have a problem and describe it in a one-shot prompt. AI will go and work away for half a day or a couple of days and come back and go, ta-da. And we're not that far away from it.
I and having had those experiences myself for those really specific, cupboard type jobs, absolutely, I agree. I think
yeah,
that's almost an
100%.
inevitability at this point.
Yeah.
That's the case. And then
Probably in
I think
another 24 months, 18 to
what we're going to
24
do in
months.
24 months, I still think it's a really hard question, if I'm totally honest, because 24 months in normal times isn't that far away. Like it still feels quite far away. What could happen in the next 24 months, I think, is the important thing. And how are we going to be able to adapt to that quickly enough to be able to seize the opportunity that exists in there somewhere, right? I think right now, and certainly into the next 6 to 12 months, I won't be drawn on 24 because I think it's just too far. But I think, the example I gave earlier, would you build your own accounts package or would you trust a company that knows how to build an accounts package and they've got the team of accountants that keeping on top of the legislation and advising the development house? And, I think there is still firstly, a lot of lack of adoption anyway. I think AI skills in general are not where they need to be. You guys know that from the previous, the white paper we produced as an example. I think that our role is going to be to, yes, use these tools and use them for clients, but I don't actually see clients using them for themselves. I think if you're a one-man band, or you're just getting out there and getting started, yeah, fair enough, crack on. This is made for you. But actually, if you want to get enterprise level solutions out of the thing, or you want to get, take Claude Design as an example, it will just design your website. But I guarantee you, I'll be able to tell within 5 seconds of visiting that website that it was built with AI. And if I can tell, so can everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think there's an art to getting that right. But in the end, technology changes. We're still going to have businesses wanting to sell stuff. They're still going to know more than they do about marketing. We're still going to know how to appeal to consumers, and there's always going to be people that just don't want to do it, right? And we're there to do it for them. And I think in the end, we'll just be more relationship people. We're here to lend our ear and advice, and it'll be more consulting than doing.
Yeah. I think there's an element, I think, where humans, and I was listening to Lenny's podcast just last week, Andrew Ambrosino. So he's like OpenAI software engineer, and he talked about future of what our roles will be. And I think I agreed with him on this context of like concept of taste, right? And having taste and authenticity and really understanding what is being asked of us from our clients, and then translating that into a technical product powered with agents and AI, right? So I think that role is still here to stay. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's going to be a place for individuals, whether it's in a big team, small team. Enterprises are already getting Claude Code at their fingertips across the entire organization. At least in the US, I'm hearing this more and more. So everybody can build prototypes. Everybody can build the sink or build the cupboard, right? But your engineers are still using, Claude Code to build an architect because of the taste component, the architectural design thinking that it still requires. And yeah, relationship is huge. I think there's trust and that, humans have between each other, and expertise that you and I have in certain areas of this, economy that provide information and support and advice that business owners don't have, right? Some of them don't actually want and care enough to manage their website or their product. They just want to be in front of their own customers, right? And so that still gives us a role, a place in the market. While the day-to-day work might look a lot different, I think the expertise still is important. So yeah, that's kind of my
I think if you
sense of it.
just to add on that, if you look at like I've used the accountant and the QuickBooks and the accounting package. So I'll stay on that vein. You look at the calculator, right? Everyone can use a calculator. I hate using a calculator. And to be honest, I will not get out of a scientific calculator what maybe you guys would get out of a scientific calculator, right? And you take that forward into modern day version of a calculator, well, spreadsheets, right? Again, you look at spreadsheet usage. There's insane things you can do in a spreadsheet, right? In Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. I mean, I've seen some, when we've been collaborating on calls, Andy, some of the shortcuts and things that that I didn't know you could do, and now, AI is adding another layer of like complexity of what you can do in a spreadsheet, right? I'm not going to sit there and work on, my skills at using a spreadsheet doc. I've got a qualified accountant as a finance director. I don't need to be doing that. And I think that I trust that she knows how to use that Excel or Google Sheets way better than I ever could to get out of it what she needs to. I say that's a similar sort of thing at the moment anyway, with what we're seeing. Yeah, in theory, anybody can go to Claude or pick your poison and build stuff, but actually getting to a product at the end that is good enough, offers that authenticity, is built on the very understanding of that client and their need and the solution design that you've put forward. That bit, I don't think at the moment is replaceable. I think it's that human intuition, human experience, human knowledge. Empathy is a big one as well, an understanding and context, because you cannot give AI enough context. Even down to, if you asked AI to write you a business plan based on your financial numbers and the data that it has access to, what it isn't going to know is that you've not been feeling well for the last few weeks and you're really worried about, that doctor's appointment you've got in 4 months' time because they can't get you in any sooner. And it could be something really serious. And all of a sudden that's going to turn your life upside down. And, you've had a falling out with your missus. And there's things going on in your life and in and around the business as well. That context is you can't replace that. I don't personally think at the moment. I think that human intuition is got to stay part of it.
Absolutely.
And accountability, because good luck suing an AI.
It's true.
Go.
Cool.
I think that's all right, guys.
Yeah, I feel that was a negative note to end it on. And it's actually a positive one. I basically what I'm saying is there's a big role for human beings, at least for the next couple of years.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree.
Absolutely. And we'll adapt and we'll evolve and do things, supercharge 10x what we do with AI.
10x.
Absolutely, maybe even more. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Really, really appreciated chatting today and learning about some of the tools that you guys are using. There's obviously a lot more tools out there, and if there's any questions that people have about any of the tools that we've mentioned today, or if you think there's a really super exciting tool that we need to know about and we can go and have a look at, feel free to drop a comment either on YouTube or wherever you're listening or watching, and we'll try and follow up on the next session.
Amazing.
As I said at the start, there may be a little bit of a gap between now and the next one, just due to holidays and things going on, but we'll see you on the other side. I'm going to put my out of office on now because I'm heading off to Cyprus in the morning. So I'll see you on the other side, guys. All right.
See you soon.
You mean you're not going to get your agent to work for you, no?
Yeah, well, possibly. All right. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.